Hi, everybody. This is Marcus Fairs at the Dezeen Broadcasting Studio in London, coming live with our final talk as part of our collaboration with Dutch Design Week this week. We've done 5 live conversations every day during the week, and each of them has introduced a bunch of designers who are working around one of the sub-themes of Dutch Design Week. Today's sub-theme is the intimacy of the workplace. As we all know, during the pandemic, we've been forced to change the way that we work. We've been forced to reevaluate workplaces and working practices and the way that creative people show their work. That's what we're going to talk about today, together with some examples of designers that are involved in Dutch Design Week. To kick us off, we have Jorn Konijn, who's head of program at Dutch Design Week. He's going to talk us through the main theme of Dutch Design Week, which is the new intimacy and its relationship with today's theme, the intimacy of the workplace. Hi, Jorn. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're doing.
Hi, Marcus. I'm doing very good. Thank you so much. I'm Jorn, head of program of the Dutch Design Week. We are now almost at the end. At a quite strange design week, of course, because it's all digital and only a few places which show physical work. But we're getting there. We're happy with the transition, and overall, I think it's a very nice week.
From what I've seen of Dutch Design Week this year, it's pretty much a TV network. You have people in studios all over the place doing talks. How is that going? How have the audiences been, and what has the reaction been compared to other years?
Yeah, I think overall we can really switch our profession from Monday on, no longer curators, but really kind of professional TV makers, so to speak. But all jokes aside, I think, we have quite a lot of content on offer, talks, some very commercial talks, but also some very in-depth talks from various partners. And I think overall the program is quite strong, and I'm very happy how it evolved.
And also, together with Dutch Design Week, we've put together a virtual tour of designers, many of which have been in this series of talks. So you want to tell us a little bit about how Dezeen viewers can experience that tour?
Yeah, so we have, I think, roughly 500 or 550 virtual rooms. So you can go either to Dezeen or Dutch Design Week website, enter the virtual rooms and explore. I think through Dezeen, we've also kind of curated it on the basis of the specific sub-themes. So if you're interested in stories of a product or it's in our nature, you can go to that specific sub-theme and explore the different rooms.
Okay, and next up, we're honored to have Li Edelkoort on this call, who's a long-standing friend of mine and also an ambassador at this year's Dutch Design Week. Hi there, Li.
Hi. Yes, of course. Once I become an ambassador, it's COVID time, so it's pretty difficult to do. And it's quite an experience to be in Eindhoven without the audiences. You know, this is 5 people versus 5,000 normally. So it feels very eerie and very bizarre. And there's beautiful things to see even, you know, not everything is online, but people just don't know because people were frightened by the news. So yeah, we'll see what happens after this. I think it will change the idea of weeks forever.
You mean weeks in the Design Week sense, or it will also mess with our notion of time, which is also happening?
I just think that things will be on a longer programs and smaller and more intimate, possibly.
Yeah, we can talk about this later, but the situation, it changes the nature of time in a way, doesn't it? It also changes the nature of place. So you can have Dutch Design Week happening ostensibly in Eindhoven, but most of the people on this talk aren't in Eindhoven. They're in Rotterdam or London. So it's like the location becomes sort of irrelevant in a way, in terms of a physical gathering point.
That's right. That's it's a very big repositioning, I think, of all these events.
And so we'll come back to you in a minute, Li. So we also have a second Dutch Design Week ambassador on this call. We're very, very lucky today, Sabine Marcelis. Hi there, Sabine.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And how are you getting on and where are you?
I'm in my studio in Rotterdam at the moment. I was in Eindhoven for the opening weekend. which was very different than any other opening weekend, obviously. And spent a lot of time in this amazing last-minute professional studio that was put together, the filming studio, I mean. But yeah, now I'm back in Rotterdam again.
Now back in Rotterdam in our not quite so professional studio, because we're all in little rooms all around Europe. But how has it been? I mean, it's a great honor to be an ambassador for Dutch Design Week. I was an ambassador a few years back, and it was great to be able to turn up at events and feel like, hey, I'm an ambassador, I'm walking into this room. You've had to do it all virtually pretty much. How has the experience been?
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise with Li Edelkoort, I was like, wow, very honored to be an ambassador, especially alongside the other ambassadors. But yeah, a very different year and having to rethink everything. Initially, I wanted to put together a really immersive installation, but that quite quickly became apparent that that wouldn't be a good idea. So it's just been a lot of rethinking how to communicate and how to present work.
Great, and we'll come back to you in a minute, Sabine. And finally, we have Gianmaria, Della Ratta and Giorgio Gasco, who are two designers. Hi there, guys.
Hello, Marcus. Thank you for inviting us.
You're very welcome. And you're in Rotterdam as well, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Exactly. Right now, we are in Gallery Lek. It's a space curated by Foundation Mesh. And we have this opportunity to be with a physical exhibition open because in front of us, there's actually 10 small windows where people passing by can see inside the exhibition.
And what's that thing hanging on the wall behind you? It looks like a kind of very elaborate toilet seat or something.
It's a stucco decoration piece. And we're gonna introduce the whole story soon.
Yeah, during the presentation.
Yes, definitely. And it talks about campers and the world of streamers and how they create their spaces on the back as a back wall. Exactly.
It also looks a bit like a virus. Sorry, I'm being very rude about your, your backdrop there. But at least I noticed it. It's definitely interesting. Right, anyway, let's move on quickly. Let's go to Jorn. Jorn, if you could share your presentation and tell us a little bit about why, what the intimacy of the workplace theme is all about and why you've chosen it.
Yep. Let me see if I can share it. Can you all see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so earlier this year, we started thinking about the theme, and our main theme is the new intimacy. We elaborated on that in the Dezeen talk on Monday, but it basically kind of tries to make a connection, the main theme to the times we're living, these strange times of Corona. We didn't want to make let's say a Corona edition, but we really felt that we had to address the problems that we have in society nowadays. Which is mainly focused on what we think is the difficulty with intimacy. We cannot touch each other, we cannot greet each other, we cannot shake each other's hands. So this became kind of the umbrella for the whole week. And we started to divide that into 4 sub-themes that we discussed on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today the final one. And the one that we're discussing today is the intimacy of the workspace, which really focuses on the artist studio. And it derived from actually a very practical point of view, because we soon enough realized that we probably won't have a Dutch Design Week as it normally is, with huge spaces, with a lot of people. And we thought it would be good to have a very small and intimate design week in which we would only kind of open up designer studios with a limited number of people. So the idea was really started from a very practical point of view. But from that on, we started thinking about what is the artist studio actually nowadays? What is the designer studio nowadays? I won't do a whole, let's say, art historian lecture, but I just wanted to start off with the beautiful painting of Courbet, the artist studio, which I think one of the first times really became, the art studio became the subject and not so much the process before creating an artwork. And I think ever since artists, designers, but especially the audience have been fascinated with the studio. What goes on in that laboratory? What is the magic that artists or designers are cooking up and eventually show things to the world? So I think this space is very interesting and intriguing for people to think about. Now we try to see like how has this evolved, the stereotypical idea of an artist in his attic, the kind of lone genius here, Karel Appel, the great Dutch painter, creating beautiful work and then showing it to the public. Now, this has really evolved over time. You see that somebody like Warhol really tried to make like an economic model out of the artist studio. Here, the factory, which became, I think, an integral part of his whole work and his whole persona. But with designer studios and with architect studios, I think there's other things that come in play. I think the idea of education is much stronger here. Le Corbusier in his studio teaching his workers about good architecture, I assume. Here, the Eames, and I love this picture very much because it's, I don't know if it really looks like an artist studio. It's much more like a toy store where you see them play around. And I think also the designer studio and the architecture studio is much more, or is much less an individual place than the artist studio, at least in the stereotypical way, I would say. And I wanted to bring out this image as well, because if you don't know who the bold man at the right is, you might think that this is a studio of a bank or of an accountant consultancy agency, but it is actually an artist studio. It's an architecture studio. So yeah, we're really trying to look at these various notions. And then, of course, recently the artist studio has maybe also disappeared in some cases and has become the street. Because nobody really knows, does Banksy have a studio where he cooks up these things? But I think lastly, you could also say that nowadays the artist studio is within this machine. I think most artists bring their studio with them, travel with it, and bring it to the bedroom, to the living room. So the studio is really mobile. So there's all these different notions that we thought are very interesting to look at. And I think the two main questions that we kind of try to tackle with this is, has the lack of physical and sensory contact with the pieces affected what designers are developing? This was one of the first questions. And I think the second one was, of course, related to Corona. What impact has the quarantine had on the relationship between the designers and their studio? I spoke very briefly yesterday to Kiki van Eyck, and she told me that during the quarantine, she went back into her studio a lot and into also different studios, making completely different work again, and kind of trying to find a new connection again with her studio. So I think yeah, these are many notions that we try to address with this sub-theme, and I'm very curious to hear the stories of the other designers about this theme.
Thanks, Johan. And those two questions that you asked then, have you had an answer? I mean, has the lack of contact changed the way that the work, has it changed the nature of the work? Has it? Are we going to see a different type of design now, thanks to these circumstances that creative people have been through?
I think it differs a lot. I think when I spoke to Kiki, she said, I'm making completely different work now in my studio because I'm in a new, let's say, new zone, new frame of mind. And it really gives me the freedom to explore new ways again. So I think this, let's say, the reintroduction to the studio brings for her a new kind of creative wave. But maybe for others who already, let's say, working digitally, it's just a mere continuation of what they were doing already.
Okay, and did you see Martin Bass put out a very funny movie yesterday? He's been making a series of movies during the pandemic, and the first one he shared with everyone was him responding to the pandemic and giving it all his creative thought, and it was just about 2 minutes of him going, And now he's put out a funny movie of him saying, I'm going to just shut down for the winter, and it's him being like locked inside, screwed inside a shipping container and put on a shelf for the winter.
Well, this is also, I think, something that many designers kind of, they're usually used to, let's say, the energy of things and the flow of things, and all of a sudden we're halted. And what does it mean for the flux of the work and the creativity you have?
And with you must have had conversations with hundreds of designers that are involved in Dutch Design Week, and I imagine it's been hard for them having to approach this year's Dutch Design Week in a completely different way. I would imagine also there's a kind of degree of euphoria that they've done it, but what do you think will happen afterwards? Once they've packed up and gone away, what is the kind of collective mood of the Dutch design world going to be over the winter, do you think?
Well, it's a bit strange, of course, because many of these works won't be packed up and won't be finished on Sunday, because most of it went digital and they just keep on going. But there are, of course, some works that are still physically on show. I think Liedewij will talk a little bit about that. So it's a little bit mixed in a sense. I think some won't really have this feeling of packing up and going into a winter sleep, so to speak. Some will just continue.
Okay, thanks very much, Jon. Liedewij.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there, if you could share your screen with us.
I'll try. Here we are. Yeah, I've been preparing quite several ideas and events. So I've been very busy, crazy, and most of it is really for the public and they can still see it. So that is a chance. The Kazerne is open, Van Abbe is open, Van Abbe House is open. But unfortunately, there's of course a very small amount of people because people just didn't come. And people from the big cities were not really so welcome, I think, in the provinces because it's very dangerous right now in this country. So yeah, I don't know why it's there. It's there. It will be able to be seen for a longer period of time. So hopefully people will follow up later. One of the things we show in the Kazerne is called Comma, which is very much about this intimacy because it's, I don't know how I cannot, yeah. It's collaboration with Ina and Matthijs. They are an architect and artist couple from the Netherlands. And we created this for Google in Tokyo. And we just recall it here because it's so well positioned in this time frame. It's renderings of Google products, but in a very abstract way, brought together with some domestic objects, which are combined with the objects of the design objects of Google. So this is about the office of the future. This is about how the office becomes domestic and is completely integrated into a minimalist environment. But it's also comma because we wrote a piece which is a critique also on us and them, trying to say, let's have a comma and let's have, some time to think. Let's take it easy and let's be a bit more remote and let's rethink our relationship with these things. Then there is in the Kazerne and in the Van Abbe Museum a very new idea where art and design are brought together with the purpose of somehow rethinking both strategies and disciplines. And this is pieces of my collection and pieces of the collection of the Van Abbe. And we call this exhibit the New Melancholy. And so we try to pick up design items which somehow explain that mental moment we're in. And so somebody saw in this picture a Magritte, which was really interesting because it does have an echo. And so there's some sort of idea of the desolation we are feeling right now, which is rendered through the accumulation of art, craft, and design. And finally, opposite the Van Abbe Museum, I made a very new idea, which is to discover libraries of creative famous people. I start with Anton Baker, my partner, who left us 2 years ago. I had all his books and I wanted to share these books with many. And so together with a group of people, we are now developing with the libraries in the Netherlands this idea to somehow edit libraries of architects, photographers, and so on. And this is going to travel through the Netherlands in libraries to look at books through the lens and the eyes of somebody else, to really rethink what a book is and how we can deal with books. And of course, he is a great collector, so there is lots of erotism, but also graphic design, also typography, photography, and so on. It's very interesting. Furniture is by Tort Boontje online. So it's all very easy. And very comfortable and nice to be there. That's more or less what I'm doing here. And then we will finalize all my actions tomorrow with the launch of the World Hope Forum, which will be from the Netherlands, because I'm here and this is the Design Week after all. And we are going to gather many, many people. We already have more than 1,500 people coming, so it's going in the right direction. And yeah, I hope that we can distribute hope over this planet.
So tell us a little bit about the World Hope Forum that's taking place this weekend, isn't it? So tell us about that idea and what is it?
The idea is that I want the creative forces to have a place at the table. For now, the creative people on this planet are making the money, which is then handled and distributed and mishandled by marketing and finance and management. And in the end, the creative people are never there to find solutions and to find direction. And I believe that creative people are much better placed to see the future, to design a future, to reconsider new ways of making and distribution, and completely humanize the process and do all this with planet and people in mind and not just money. So it's focusing on how creative thinking and design can change the world. For the better. And so we're going to have testimonies of people in all countries where we have ambassadors. This will all be online, this all will be virtual. And it will then accumulate into a congress with maybe several days where we will see, you know, horizons we will create, where we will see paths we can trace together to find new ways of making. We will learn from each other. It's totally allowed to learn from each other. There will be open source. Hopefully people will also then connect together over the continents. And so, yeah, it's a big goal, but it's trying to position itself against Davos.
The World Economic Forum, it's the anti-Davos, is it?
Yeah.
And back in March, I did an interview with you just when the pandemic was just starting, and it became the most read story we've ever published. 800,000 people have now read that story. And you talked about the pandemic offering a blank page for a new beginning. But in your talk just now, you were using words like melancholy and desolation. Has your opinion of the way the pandemic is affecting the world changed since back in March? Are you more optimistic, less optimistic?
It's maturing and it's going through phases. So there is an obvious melancholy just by the mood we're in. Maybe also because we're going into winter, which is a very different climate than going into spring. Many people loved the spring last time, and now we go into indoors. It's really like hibernation, actually. And so there is, it's not as sort of happy and optimistic and family as it was before. But it's maturing and I think it's deepening. So we are finding new resources and you have to just go deeper, I think, because you know, also it's going to be longer. So you have more an idea of what we still have to live through. How are we going to do that? Where, with whom and where? And no longer traveling is also, of course, fantastic, but taking also a toll, because you are no longer connected in the same way. And virtual cannot completely, you know, solve those problems, as we know. So yeah, new problems are coming up, new awareness, but I'm not negative or pessimistic. I just still see a lot of chances. And it's very beautiful that some people see this as a rechance, you know, like that this a second lockdown. They said this is like a, maybe now I can really become aware, like Martin really closing up, you know, and just waiting and maybe gaining insight and energy. So it's a very weird but interesting time, because new things also happen all the time, new ideas. I mean, this whole world thing came from our discussions and, being far away, and suddenly when so many people read such an article, it's like you feel obliged to do something about it, right? You need to take up the challenges and create, I would say, context, and especially bring people together. I think that's one of the major motors of today.
And a lot of your work is based on notions of physicality and tactility. You talked about Google, and you've been working with Google for a few years, and often it involves taking a brand which is virtual and then imagining how it could work in the real world and giving kind of texture to physical products and things like that. So how has this affected you and your work now that you can't really be so tactile and physical?
How
have you adapted?
because I'm still making my books. They still sell. It's a miracle. And actually, the last book was completely focusing on paper as an inspiration for materiality, for tactility, for color, and so on. And also to be using paper as a textile itself. And I had decided that before the lockdown, so I had all the ingredients, and then I started to make my books without pictures, without, colors. It was like trying to find out again how to do things completely from scratch. And it was fun actually to do things in a primitive way again. But these books are still reaching out to clients who need to have tactility, who need to feel textiles. But how do you shop textiles if you cannot travel and shop? So we shopped via email, and with all our favorite providers of textiles. And they would then send me samples, and then I could sort of sort it out. So it's completely new ways of doing, but in the end, it is a physical object.
And do you think there will be long-term changes to the way that people relate to objects and to other people?
Yes, I believe that we will have more respect for things. I already feel that we seem to be looking at objects, more precisely. Like we take a little bit more time. We are more also at home. Clothes, I think, become more like friends than before. People relate to their clothes much more because you become aware about them. Normally, you just, close very quickly and you go. Now you have a bit more time. So there is going to be more respect, more time, really, like more time, understanding better the value of things, I would say, respect and empathy. Those are key words for now, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Li. Sabine, it's your turn. So if you could share your screen with us and show us your presentation.
Yeah. One moment. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, so I am a designer that primarily works from materials, and I create objects and spaces that really need to be experienced in person. The material properties of reflection and transparency, it's very difficult to communicate those, and all the nuances that you experience when you have physical contact with these objects and spaces is very difficult to translate into a digital sense. So with this strange year and wanting to do a big installation as part of my ambassadorship, we really sort of had to rethink how to do that. I just wanted to show a project I did in the past as a good example of one of my works that is just so different to experience this in person. It was a project for Fendi at Design Miami in 2018. And there were 10 fountains that treated water in 10 different ways. And they were very three-dimensional objects. And there was, yeah, the play of light, the three-dimensionality coupled with transparency and the water movement. So I just wanted to quickly show that. So, yeah, as I said quite early on, I decided not to do a big installation, but to create a new body of works with a gallery that represents my work in Brussels called Victor Hunt Gallery. So I created, this is a wall light. And when it's turned on, you get this really beautiful interaction between the light, how it gets filtered through color. It's actually made with a two-way mirror, so you get this repeated reflection as well. And if you were to stand in front of it, you would get a reflection of yourself. So there's so many things that go on in this one object. And to communicate that through images, it's quite limiting. And I think, you know, we've seen throughout this year that many of the fairs that didn't go on have tried to present designers and artists' work through these digital viewing rooms, where the work is represented in sort of scanned versions or flat images, but in a recreated space. And I just always thought that it's just lacking so much. And there's also a lack of control, because when you are visiting a gallery, you as the viewer get to decide how you navigate through that space and how you experience the objects. And I think one really important part of the objects that I design is that they should spark this sense of curiosity, that you really want to get a little bit closer to understand, like, what is this material? How exactly is this made? And that you can take a peek around the side of it. So together with the gallery owner, Alexi, we've actually created the show in a remote gallery space. But then when you visit the website, you're actually, as the viewer, you're given control back as to how you discover these objects. So there's actually a camera in the remote gallery, and you can take over control of that camera through the website. So here you see there's someone going through and looking more up towards the object. And I think just that sense of giving a little bit of control back to the viewer still allows for a little bit more of a personal connection to the object, which I think it's quite important, that now you can be sort of anywhere around the world, but there are these local eyes on the scene. So it's a suggestion how you could present work in this time of a limited intimacy. And then here you see also the reflection of the camera. So it makes it much more real than just images or three-dimensional 3D visualizations of the objects. And then I have a second project for Dutch Design Week as well, which was kind of creating a catalog of all my works in 3D. So on my website, you can go and discover all these different projects I've done in the past. And again, control is given a little bit more to the viewer, where you can physically maneuver it around. And it's actually a collaboration with a company in Veldhoven called Dimenco, and they've created this amazing technology with eye tracking. So these objects can pop out of your computer screen, sort of like a hologram in front of your screen, without the use of these VR goggles. So it's like integrated into their screens. So I guess I used this ambassadorship a bit more about how, like, rethinking communication within my studio. How do we communicate with each other when we're all working from home? How do I communicate my work to possible clients? And how can you optimize this communication when my work is so rooted in physical communication? So that was the main thing that I've been busy with for Dutch Design Week this year.
So it sounds like you've been experimenting with ways of allowing people to experience your work virtually in a better way. But has the work that you're doing in itself changed, or do you think it will change in future?
It's kind of funny because my studio has always been working on a really broad range of projects. So we do both objects shown at galleries or museums, but then also collaborations with fashion houses or architecture firms where they're much more bigger installations. So I think I've definitely noticed a shift in where the interest is coming from at the moment. Like the objects that are placed in residential homes, the demand for that has gone way up compared to normally, because I think people have this increased sort of investment in making their home space more lively to live in. And then the installation work has basically disappeared or is on hold for now. But we're very busy still. So in a way it doesn't feel different because the pace at my studio is still the same. And in this year we've sort of gone through different phases of lockdown. So there was a moment where we were all working from home. There's been moments where some of us have been working from home. And now we're sort of all back in the studio again. So I think the main thing that's changed is that we've just optimized this communication, and not every meeting is a plane trip anymore. But at the same time, it also feels not so different. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so the same but different. Yeah. And you're talking about the idea of virtual tactility and technology that allows objects to sort of almost leap out of the screen towards people. Do you think, and I'm going to ask all the others this question later, but I'll start with you since the topic's come up. Do you think that we're getting to a point where we can experience objects through a screen and there are technologies waiting around the corner to allow us to do that? Or do you think that the virtual will never really be a substitute for physical experiences? Because some of the technologies are getting quite clever, aren't they?
It's true, but no, I don't believe that it can 100% take over from it, because there are so many things that trigger your emotions and senses that can only happen in a real physical experience. Like, I don't know, is smell gonna pop out of your screen as well? Or is someone gonna touch you from your screen? No, it's not possible. Of course there's suggestions and sort of compromises for the moment. And of course they will stay as well. But I think looking forward, it will be, if anything, a combination of the both. But the purely physical, it can never be completely taken over. No, I don't think so.
And if you were to make a prediction, would you expect that? Are you hoping that things will go back to normal before too long, or do you think we'll find a way of getting used to this strange new world where lots of physical experiences, like getting on planes, like going to galleries and so on, and meeting up with lots of people, we kind of accept that that's over and get used to this new way of doing things? What do you think is going to happen?
I hope for an in-between. I definitely don't think it needs to go back to before with, you know, a fair or some sort of event every day if you want to. And so much travel, I think it's very clear that that's also unnecessary. But I also think that it's kind of our job as designers to take these moments and creatively think for both opportunities within this moment. You know, there's always silver linings. There's always something that you can take and give it a positive twist and new innovations. If anything, this is kind of a really exciting moment as well to take that opportunity and be creative with it.
Okay, thanks very much, Sabine. Let's go now to Gianmaria and Giorgio.
Hello,
Hey,
Mark.
guys.
Hey, hello. I'm gonna quickly share my presentation, our presentation with you.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this project is also our first project as a duo. And we're going to present you Digital Muses that talks about virtual intimacy. As you also said before in the introduction, the physical space has been a lot affected, workspace, by the coronavirus crisis. But on the contrary, the virtual space has been amplified and strengthened by it. So also digital media are now part of our daily lives, and especially in this situation we are all living in, we cannot almost live or work without them. So for this reason, we as designers, we felt the need to investigate this universe, to live consciously in it, but also to understand it, and to use it for design purposes. Since it's, we think, fascinating both from design perspective and also social perspective. So we let the streamers inspire us. We researched about the bedroom culture. Within sociology, is defined as the space where youth develop their own identity. And of course, as children grow up, this evolves towards street-based subcultures and virtual realms. One of these is for sure the profession of the streamer, where the identity becomes in a way public. So then from many streamers that we have searched on, we researched, there were cam girls, and we were really fascinated by this type of streamers, and we started researching about specifically their rooms, driven by curiosity and with the eye of a designer.
Yeah, in this picture we can see all different little workspace, and it's really interesting how they created their own identity. Our goal is to elevate this aesthetic universal digital content, and because we think that in these visuals, in these scenarios, we see a big artistic value. We then try to extrapolate some symbols. We extrapolate the language, even the dress code that they were using, and trying to adapt it into a design piece, a design process. We did also some interviews with them. We try to contact also candors in like to have like a physical discussion, a physical talk, but it turns out it was actually really difficult to meet them in person. We also wanted to invite them in this interview, but we respected somehow the virtual intimacy. So we realized that virtual intimacy is something that kind of stays there, stays digital. With this interview, we actually understood, apart from how the camming business works, we also understood how important is the scenography. This girl in particular, she told me that she tried to dress according to the room. She tries to, because in this case, the room is actually rented. There are studios that you can rent, but also for the scenography, they have like their own YouTube channel where they can learn how to set up the right lighting, or even the set designer who do that specific job, or even the description full of colors and text. And I think so this was really inspiring for us. And then we moved on like, okay, now we want to create something that get this inspiration, and we want to transform it in a physical way. So we move on stucco wall decoration.
Yeah, because as we all know, stucco decorations are, stucco is very decorative. It's a very decorative element, but also a narrative element. And we wanted to use this powerful aesthetic and narrative in combination with the camgirl words, which questions the concept of intimacy, sexuality, and rights. So for these reasons, then as you can see also from the stucco behind, our stucco pieces are not only decorative or furnishing pieces, but also pieces of storytelling, of this digital movement that is rich in symbols, messages, and fleeting stories. So in the end, it's a combination in this research and investigation and the techniques deriving from the stucco. One of the pieces that we have made is Lovens for You, and takes inspiration from this specific tool, which is the Lovens, which is a remote controlled vibrator, which is increasingly being used in the performances of this camera. And as you can see, we extrapolated the shape of it and digitized it. But then to realize it, we decided to 3D print this shape according to a stucco, a precise stucco element. And then we casted also plaster and marble powder as the old traditional technique.
We already spoke about this piece. This is Furry 20. It takes inspiration from the fur that is, it comes in the shape of pillow, blankets in those rooms, but also wigs. For example, in cosplay cases. And then also we translate it into a wall stucco piece. We've made many more. Each piece has his little story. But also we would like to conclude by saying that streamers are many. The Kangaroo were an opportunity for us to get inspiration, but we already started to work on gamers, makeup artists, and even chefs for the future. And let's see what we are gonna get as a result. Let's see what, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Well, that looks like it was an interesting research project. And when you showed the pictures of all the different streaming environments, I mean, they have a lot of things in common, don't they? A lot of soft, pastel-y colors. I mean, did you get to understand why they'd made that aesthetic choice? Is that across the whole industry, or was it just happened to be the people that you reached out to all had very similar environments?
We did a selection, of course, in this case for this picture, because we try to extract a certain language, exactly.
A common language between all these different rooms.
Yes, yes.
And that's why in the picture we showed you, they were looking all the same, because we have made precise choices in like understanding what was the common language between
yes.
in the cameras.
But also it's true that there are many other ways they present their studios. Some are way more amatorial, but for example, we include the L wire. It's not a neon, it's an L wire. So this light, because it's almost every time present in streamers, not only cameras, to create the setup. And
it's ambient light. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's probably, in case of the camera, it's probably the softness you say you're referring to. It's probably because of the sexuality also. It kind of creates this intimacy, cuteness as well, and kitsch sometimes.
Also because I think in the interview you have done, she also said that the way she dressed and the room, this influenced also the public. So this is also one of the reasons we think.
And did you ask why she dressed to match the room? Did that increase her business? Did it make her feel more comfortable? Was there some kind of psychological reason?
No, yes. Like what I was just telling is that in the interview, then when Giorgio asked why do you do that, she said like because this influence also the public, so the spectator that is watching me, and it's an essential part apparently of the job.
It's funny because after the interview, she privately sent me a picture of herself, all dressed in red, with inside the bathroom, her bathroom, which is all red, because she really wanted to point out that it was true, that it was really dressing according to how it is the space. Yeah.
And what other techniques do they use then to kind of create this atmosphere? Do they use special, like, do they use sound design? You mentioned lighting as well. I mean, it's probably quite a secret art to making your live streaming porn room the one that people want to go to.
Yeah, one, I think I think for sure, one of the technique is the lighting, because as you were saying also before, they have like there are specific tutorial on how to set up the perfect light for this kind of streamings. But also I think you know about the camera.
Yeah, the camera, there's also umbrella, and this works also again for other streamers. It's not only the camera, but in these studios that they rent out, and it's possible to check online how they are. And they already create a whole kit set up for, like, it's almost a photo studio. It looks like that. But a case we can bring, it was also in the presentation. There's one girl, she set up the whole thing in the garage of her house, where she's streaming on top of the car. So she's literally laying on the car and making performance. So that's why we think this is totally artistic project. This is totally something inspirational. You know?
Inspirational for us. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you're going to now go and speak to professionals in other sectors. Have you already discovered that they approach things the same way? Do they curate their environment and set their lighting to achieve specific things from their clients?
Yeah, I think like we already started researching about gamers, for example, and also there I think it's a bit different, the thing, because for gamers the most important thing inside the view that you see as a viewer is the game itself, and they are only like in a small square streaming from their bedrooms. And it's of course true that they have all around their favorite games, consoles, posters, so different elements, but one common element is the light.
In terms of design, it's really important for them. The chair, for example, there's like a whole, we all know the gaming chair is becoming a popular, like an important item in the design world. And also the headset, so there are some details that belongs to specific streamers, definitely.
And I mean, I've read reports that there's been a big rise in the number of people wanting cosmetic surgery and getting their teeth fixed, because people are spending so long now on Zoom calls that they've become where you can see yourself as well as everyone else, that people become super self-conscious about their appearance. Of course, there are kind of filters and things like that can fake it for you. But I want to finish up the conversation by asking everyone on the call, starting with you two. How has your workplace changed? How has your physical appearance changed? How have you adapted to this reality where we're all communicating largely through screens? I notice you've got a nice pastel background there. I mean, of course, that's related to the project you're doing, but there's a little bit of a kind of streaming room aesthetic going on in your background there. How has it affected your day-to-day, the physicality of your workplace and the way and the physicality of yourselves, the pandemic?
Something I really like is the idea that I could be in underwear after this, you know. I always wanted to do it. I'm not right now, I promise.
Are you sure? Can you both stand up, please? Can you both stand up? Okay, I believe you.
Yeah, I always wanted to do it, but no, apart from this, I think we want to stay ourselves. I mean, we are not gonna try to change, but you were mentioning before filters. I think this will become something really important, because starting with the phones, with Instagram, but also Snapchat, it's possible to add so much content into the display, because at the end, the interface between now, today, us and you and all the viewers is actually just a screen. So by playing there, I think there's so much potential we can add. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask the same question to all the other speakers. So starting with you, Jorn, since the pandemic started, have you changed your office? Have you changed the background in the room that you do your streaming from? Have you changed your haircut or your clothes? How has the pandemic affected you and your environment physically?
It's quite funny that you mentioned this, actually, Marcus, because I was in this talk last Monday, and I was in the same room, but in a different point of view. And many of my colleagues responded to it. Why were you sitting like that? Because it was a big mess behind you. And so I really became aware of it, that this looks much more neutral. And at home situation, I'm also quite aware of it. First, I was doing all my sessions with in the back staircase. And some of my colleagues said like, oh, that's not feng shui. You should sit somewhere else. Then I moved to my studio and was a book cabinet behind me. And then other people started complaining, oh, you're just trying to show off with your book cabinet. So I've really become kind of, sensitive about this. So it really affects me, I must say.
But what you've now got a kind of grey curtain behind you. So
very neutral, very neutral.
I must admit, when we'd started to do the Virtual Design Festival and I was broadcasting from my house every day without really thinking about it. And then one day, and I never watched any of the talks, but one day I saw myself on Facebook and I was really horrified. So now we've invested in good lighting and a nice backdrop, and I'm feeling much more assured about my appearance and my sound. Li, what about you?
Many things changed. I got rid of my office, first of all. I sold it because we're never there and nobody's ever there. And it's a beautiful building, but this is not how it works anymore. Before the COVID already, we were all working from home or from travel or from weekend or from wherever we are. So the day I decided, long time ago, like maybe 10 years ago, I thought I should not wait to come back to work. I should take the work with me. So from that day on, when I always travel with my work, which I can do because of the tools we have, it became much more easy to live because you're all the time working, but you're never so stressed because you can just do it, you know, in between things and whenever you want. And when you wake up at 5 o'clock, or, you know, you can then maybe sleep in the day and go again. So this liberty of movement with work was a big liberation, I think. And now, of course, we have to learn how to Zoom. We did a good job from the beginning because I was with Philip, and we really, Philip Fimano, my partner, and we were in South Africa, and we both had a house and we could find nice locations, and we had a garden. So I would speak to my students and have 18 empty chairs around me, which was representing them. So I would make it into sort of installation sometimes. And the very first trend meeting we did online, I made a video. So it was a mixture of Zoom and video, which was very interesting because I spoke to people from my bed. You know, it was very intimate. And at one point, we did a seminar, and Ragnar in New York gave me white roses to thank me. And at the same time, Philip gave me real roses. So there was virtual roses and real roses. And that was then virtual again. That was very appreciated by our clients. They said, this is the best Zoom experience we've had that far, because it was a mixture of things, of techniques. So we really make it a point to sort of invent the whole system and not just do it, you know, the way most people do it. Of course, nicest was that all these people were in front of their books. I mean, everybody says books is over, and then everybody in the whole world is in front of books. That was a surprise. But it's fun. I think we will find new ways to do this. The only problem is that you cannot really brainstorm because you cannot break in. You know, that's very difficult.
But you're saying you set up 18 chairs in front of you to make you feel that your students were in the room with you? Around me.
It was very beautiful, very, again, a bit melancholic, but poetic, yeah.
Do you remember in the early days of the lockdown, people were sharing photographs of restaurants in Australia and places like that, where they put mannequins in at tables, yeah, partly to make the restaurant look busier and partly also so that the real people were separated more. There's been some really strange things, haven't they, come up in the last few months. And finally, how about you, Sabine? Has the pandemic forced you to get a new haircut or repaint your walls or rethink your dress style? How has it impacted you and your physical environment, this reality of communicating through screen?
Not so much on like a personal physical appearance level, but for sure. I mean, I think as a designer, I always think about how I present myself as like a total package. So the background it's obviously curated. But if you were to stand in front of me now, it looks ridiculous because I don't actually have a desk in front of me. I'm like sitting on a couch with books on top of a chair and then a laptop. But that doesn't matter. And when I was working from home, it was the same thing. The nicest background I have at home is this nice mural painted in the guest bedroom. And then I sort of balance the laptop on the bed while I'm sitting really close to the wall. But at the end of the day, it works better like that. And beforehand, if I had a meeting, I would just sit at my normal desk and get on with it. But I think within my team, it allowed us to discover some different computer programs, which are very effective to communicate ideas from a distance. We're working on a big project in Shanghai at the moment, and there's many levels of kind of barriers between how to communicate efficiently. There's the language, there's the fact that I can't travel there. So yeah, we've sort of discovered some different programs where you can be super clear in communicating an idea and also adding annotations in any language. So in that sense, I think that's definitely a step forward, and we still will continue using that when it gets sort of back to more, normal. It's not really normal, but I think the most annoying thing for me personally, which I really hope that sort of disappears again, is that having to create my own content. So there's a lot of projects now where obviously the press part of it, there's not really the opportunity anymore for a company to send over like a film crew or a photographer. So I've been asked quite a few times to create my own content, which I think is really difficult to ask a designer, because that's like a profession on its own. And then you're also really confronted with the fact that your private life and professional life are super blurred, because when you're working from home, I'll have like, baby crying in the background, or just interruptions that you can't control as much. And I think, it's nice to be able to decide a bit more on what you share and what not from your personal life.
I mean, since we've got this professional setup in the office, I try to avoid doing these kind of calls from home because it just looks so rubbish. I'm giving a lecture tomorrow to a conference in Turin, which I can't go to, and I'm going to come into the office on my own and turn all the lights on just so that there's no kitchen in the background or no children running around. But Gianmaria and Giorgio, in your research, did you find much evidence of people using fake backgrounds? We published on Dezeen today an interview with Amber Sloten from The Fabricants, who said there's been a huge interest in virtual fashion, i.e. clothes that you wear when you're gaming or in your Instagram profiles and things like that. It would be very possible to fake all of this, wouldn't it? So that we look like $1 million with nice watch and chateau in the background or something like that.
Yeah, I think the virtual world is full of these things. I mean, like if you also think about the gamers, they often use green screen light, green screen that you can just change with the background that you prefer. And this is very common, but it's common since like years, not only nowadays with the corona.
Now what we see now in something interesting about the clothing, because now in the digital world it's possible even to try your clothes. So there will be a model of you, and then on there you can buy clothes or just try them on you, so you can see yourself. So maybe I never seen any example of someone wearing actually, or maybe I was tricked by it, so I couldn't recognize that that's also possible.
Yeah.
But that would be nice. I would be dressed maybe, today.
No, but there are also like
or shiny or something.
I think especially on Instagram, there are a lot of these kind of fake, sort of fake millionaires that they show off like with they're taking like pictures in a private jet, which is not of them, not there. and then they just dress up like 4 or 5 times with different clothes, and they take 5 to 10 pictures, and then they post it with different, like in different days to show that they are always in their private jet.
It's different on how you create your own identity. So you can play probably way more to create the identity you want to have, or even multiple identities. So, yeah, definitely.
Well, we're going to have to end up the conversation now. It's been really fascinating talking to all of you, but I have a suspicion that through the winter, people are going to start to get more creative with their Zoom background. So we'll look back on this, but those were the early naive days of Zoom when everyone was being really honest and they had their kids in the background. And if we were to do this call again next year, I think we wouldn't recognize each other. So great to talk to you, and particularly thanks to you, Jorn, for helping us put this whole series together. It's been a great collaboration. Thanks a lot. Always good to see you, Li, and thanks so much for being responsible for our most read story of all time, and good luck with the World Hope Forum. Sabine, good to see you again, and nice to meet you, Gianmaria and Giorgio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.